session. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to our fifth and final session of Balance, getting to carbon neutrality through carbon sequestration and offsets. We're going to give it about 2 more minutes to let people trickle in, and then I think we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Garrett Wong, and I'm the Climate Program Manager for the County of Santa Barbara, also the Collaborative Manager for the Santa Barbara County Regional Climate Collaborative. And thank you for attending today. This is our 4th and final session of Balance, getting to carbon neutrality through carbon sequestration and offsets. Welcome to those who have been attending throughout the series. Welcome to those who are attending for the first time. It's been a pleasure pulling off this series and having these conversations with you all, and hopefully you all have enjoyed it as well. This is an exciting time for us to now, as we say, bring it together. We've learned a lot over the course of this series, and now we're going to have a much more different experience in this webinar session. This is actually a Zoom meeting, so this will have a lot more interactive elements to this event. So thank you again for showing up and for registering and giving us your information, which will help us provide a more guided experience. Just to cover some ground rules. This is a recorded session. Please remain muted unless you're speaking, and if you're experiencing any bandwidth or buffering issues, you can always turn off your camera. Please use the chat function or raise your hand to ask a question, and then during the breakout sessions, you can always come back to the main Zoom room for assistance if needed. So before we get started, I would really want to pause and thank the organizers of this series, including the County of Santa Barbara. We worked with Community Environmental Council, the County of Ventura, San Luis Obispo County Air Pollution Control District, the City of Santa Barbara, the City of San Luis Obispo. This was an effort of labor and love. We all came together to, again, share what we didn't know and learn together. And we wanted to really expand this group of learning and hopefully a group of practice and exploring this complex and challenging topic that's ahead of us. How do we meet the goals of carbon neutrality, address issues of carbon offsets, and promote carbon sequestration? And so we really hope that this experience has done what we hoped that it would, which is to increase awareness and interest in these concepts, as well as hopefully stimulate some networking and ideas for potential projects going into the future, particularly in the Central Coast region where we are working and living right now. A big thanks also to our two hosts, which are the Central Coast Climate Collaborative and the Santa Barbara County Regional Climate Collaborative. Both collaboratives are actively engaged in similar issues when it comes to providing different organizations and public agencies and businesses opportunities to come together and learn from each other and identify collaborative solutions to our complex climate change problems. Carbon sequestration will continue to feature largely in the work that we do collectively. And so I encourage you to look into each of these collaboratives if you're so inclined and consider joining as a member. So just to recap, where we've been and where we're at now, we started back in late April and we touched on what we would call the basics, although it took a very quick turn into the advanced inner workings of carbon markets. We learned about the different aspects of both voluntary and regulated markets and the considerations when these markets come into play with CEQA, some of the pitfalls that can also factor in, but also the opportunities. There's an immense amount of market demand that is both on the regulated and voluntary side, and being able to meet that demand will be the challenge that we face next. The second session, supply side considerations, opened up the hood, so to speak, on what happens when carbon offsets get created, who is involved, and how does that process work. We heard from a couple of project developers who work as folks who can help develop a project and get it to market. We learned from someone who works from a carbon offset registry who helps to catalog all of these projects, establish protocols for these projects, and then sell them to off-takers. In the third session, Carbon Markets Demand Side Considerations, we heard from different organizations at different levels of what kinds of considerations go into procuring carbon offsets and how that calculus of meeting the regulated intent or the policy directive or meeting local concerns are balanced alongside with what's available on the marketplace, what's available at a certain price, and what's available locally. And we learned that California is a challenging environment to do carbon offsets, but that there still is, as I mentioned, an increasing amount of demand that will hopefully continue to spur some action. In the fourth session, we went beyond carbon markets to learn more about holistic and integrated projects. This was a departure from looking at the traditional, conventional carbon offset systems, looking at more ways in which we can support and fund land stewardship in ways that will help draw down carbon. And we heard from a local resource conservation district and their partners in thinking about ways in which these potential projects and landowners can identify prospective work and then help bring down the essential funding that's necessary to implement it. And we also heard from a local vineyard in San Luis Obispo County that is already doing a lot of this good work, a lot of regenerative agriculture and holistic land management, and is really seeing the benefits of that work create a new biodiversity that hasn't been seen before on their land. So now we're here today in our final session, where we get to kind of debrief a little bit from what we've learned and all that we've covered, and kind of interact with each other. And so this is an opportunity for you to help, to roll your sleeves up, help us kind of synthesize what we should be taking away from this process and from this learning. And also think about how could this turn into a potentially a carbon offset project or a carbon sequestration project. We're going to be putting you into small groups, and hopefully those groups will be able to have some fruitful conversations, around a hypothetical situation. But really, we also want to connect you with other stakeholders in this space, because we believe that this is going to be a growing professional development opportunity, as well as a growing industry. And it's important that we all start getting to know each other better, because this will continue to force us to work across different silos and different industries and sectors and regions. So with that, again, want to thank you all for being here today. I'm going to turn it over now to Lucia Pullman from San Luis Obispo to start facilitating this exercise. So, Lucia.
Awesome. It's such a pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us. I'm really excited to introduce this workshop that we're all going to be able to go through. So my name is Lucia Pullman, and I join you from the city of San Luis Obispo, where I work as the city's sustainability and natural resources analyst. So this final gathering of the minds is designed as a workshop session, somewhat akin to a hackathon, where groups of participants will have dedicated time to workshop a carbon sequestration idea, given all the new information about supply and demand side considerations that we've gained through participating in this webinar series. So this is your chance to really roll up your sleeves and put what you've learned into practice. We'll have 45 minutes, in breakout groups, followed by about 30 minutes to share out key findings and concepts that each group developed. The webinar organizers have created a series of breakout groups that are aligned by interest. And so I don't know if y'all remember back when you originally signed up for the webinar, but we asked you a series of questions about the role that you play in this ecosystem of change. You might be a visionary where you have a specific carbon project in mind that you want to see happen. You could be a landowner who has legal title or long-term management rights to a parcel, and you're interested in pursuing this on your property. Alternatively, you could be a funder who's bringing funds to this conversation. You could be an implementer. You might be one of the few people in our county who have the mechanical equipment to spread compost on rangelands. Or you could be a learner that you've heard the word carbon farming or carbon sequestration thrown around, and you want to learn more so you can be a part of the solution. So we've really noted your roles. And so I just want to give everyone a chance to think back to that moment and think, oh yeah, what role do I play in this ecosystem? Because we're going to ask you to lean into that role in your breakout group. We also took note of the specific types of carbon projects that you were interested in. We are at a low attendance rate for today with around 23 people joining us, whereas other sessions had around 100. So the breakout groups that we're going to be in today might be a little bit more of a melding of various interests just based on us wanting to have at least 4 people in each breakout group. But trust us that we were very intentional with designing the attendees of each breakout group. And we hope that the folks that you find in your room for the next 45 minutes are really generative in ideating a carbon farming solution. So I'm going to point y'all to a Google Doc that we've developed that will guide our conversation together. So this kind of outlines some key parameters that we hope will guide your conversation, as well as some really specific questions that we hope you can answer today. So Clay will be putting that in the chat for all of us to open right now. And we can also share it in the breakout group chat to make, in case anyone doesn't get it. And there's a handful of session organizers that are on the call with us today that will be either fully participating in each of the groups or will be bouncing between a few of the groups. So just a heads up that some of us may be joining and leaving your group. But if you do need any assistance, if it feels like your conversation is stalled or you're not quite sure what to be doing, we are so here to help you navigate the next 45 minutes to be the most productive as possible. So just raise your hand in the Zoom bottom toolbar, and we'll make sure to visit your breakout group as soon as we can. With that, I think we're ready to go.
Yo, floaters. So Lucia, if you'll split carbon farm / sustainable lands with me, as well as biochar, we can kind of tag team floating for those. Morel, if you could take, I think it was offsets for cap goal attainment, that would be great.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we have biochar, low till.
And just so you know, we're
offsets.
being recorded right now, so no funny
I'll be on
business while
my
people are in the
best
breakout rooms.
behavior. Carbon farming and sustainable lands.
That's
cool.
right. So I had to, yeah, exactly. I had to put people into those other rooms, but I think the sizes are about right. And I tried to kind
Yeah.
of do it as low till and other practices, offsets, which is kind of like GHG thresholds, cap goals, and that stuff. And then carbon farming and sustainable land is more of the kind of holistic and maybe the funding and projects side, which you've got Michael Larcher in there from Upper Salinas RCD's group. So he's right there is going to be a good one. So they should be getting into introductions.
Great. So I just confirming, because the groups are different, I heard you say a few that you wanted me to focus my attention on for the next 45 minutes.
If you would keep an eye on carbon farming and sustainable land, which is one group.
Yeah, I will
as
do
well
that.
as every once in a while, you or I should pop in and make sure that biochar is doing okay.
That Andy's doing a good job in that little
That's
mini
right.
group.
I think
Okay,
he'll be fine.
cool.
I'm less worried about him than almost anyone else.
Me too. So that sounds great. I apologize. We put in so much work on designing these epic breakout groups. What was the attendance like last week?
I don't remember, honestly. I want to say it
Yeah.
was 60 or 80,
Okay,
give or take.
a sharp decline.
It went down. Yeah, it went down a little. All right, I'm going to send out a broadcast to the breakouts, which anyone that watches this video will know, because this is the middle room. So let's see.
Great. Okay, well, I'm gonna hop into carbon
do.
farming, and I will float back in maybe around 4 o'clock.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, and then
And even if I don't get to join the breakouts, it's not the end of the world. I just want the conversations to go well, and I'm just going to
Yeah.
assume that y'all have it handled.
Thanks, Clay.
Okay, see you in a bit. Hello, Nanette. Oh, hi there. I think I heard you a little bit, but not much. Nanette. Oh, okay. For the purposes of recording, I'm going to go ahead and give people a little background. What we've done is we've sent people into breakout rooms. We have a total of about 20 or so participants. We have a little over 20 participants that have joined us for today. And they have been sent into a couple of different topically organized breakout rooms. Right now, they're doing introductions. They're going to start by sharing their names, sharing the organizations they represent, so we understand the work areas and focus areas that people have. And then in addition to that, they're hopefully going to share a little bit about their project interests, specifically as those related to what we've been talking about in the carbon sequestration webinar series. Are they interested in climate action plan goal attainment? Are they interested in GHG thresholds? Are they interested in more technical aspects like biochar, low-till practices, agroforestry, and those sorts of activities? So those are the things they're going to share with each other before they move into a discussion that will hopefully give them an opportunity. We've tried to lump them into groups based on shared interests, but not siloed interests. So we want people to have different perspectives so they can really workshop some of the concepts that they're going to bring to those. The groups we have them in is one that's where people specifically express interest in biochar. Another one where people express interest in low-till practices as well as other practices. Biochar, composting, and low or no-till practices were particularly popular in some of our initial survey responses. And then we've got a group titled Offsets and Cap Goal Attainment. And then in addition to that, we've got carbon farming and sustainable land as another group. And those I would say are more of a holistic practice on how do you start a farming operation and move it into these healthy soils type programs, and other ones that may have carbon funding and other kind of off-taking projects associated with those activities. So with that, that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to go back off the mic a little bit. This is going to probably be a relatively quiet recording for the next 45 minutes or so while people are in those breakout rooms before we come back for the debrief. And I'm just hoping those conversations are going well, and then we'll know more about it. All right, I'm back really briefly. Anyone that's watching this, the groups are going to be in session for another 38 minutes. And so they're going to be in those breakout rooms. And if you want to simply fast forward this recording 38 minutes from wherever you're at right now, that should get you to the right place. Enjoy. Hello, Brian. Brian, can you hear me okay? I cannot hear you so far. Or you're still muted.
Oh, I'm muted. No, I'm not
Oh,
muted.
there you go. Everyone else is in the breakout rooms right now. Would
Okay.
you like to jump right to one of those?
Yeah,
But
please.
we are.
Sure.
You're in the very exciting recording of the main room at the moment.
My moment of fame.
That's right. But we've got, depending on which one you want to go to, I can look at those, but we had to shuffle them a little bit based on, oh, all right, he got into a breakout room. Thanks all. Hello, Nanette. Hi there, Nanette. Do you need a hand with anything?
I'm trying to get off mute. I couldn't figure it out. Sorry.
No problem at all.
A lot of technical difficulties, so I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. Were you were in one of the breakouts already though, correct?
Yeah, I was, and then I got disconnected.
Oh, okay.
I'm still trying to listen in as best as I can.
Well, that is fine, and you are welcome to. You want me to send you into one, or do you want to enter it yourself?
I don't even know how to do that.
I can put you into it. We've got.
Okay,
great. You want me to tell you which ones there are? I don't know what you can see on your end.
Please,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
We've got one on biochar. We've got one on low-till and other agricultural practices. We've got one on offsets and climate action plan goal attainment, which is probably also talking about GHG thresholds. And then we've got one on carbon farming and sustainable land initiative.
Oh, carbon farming and sustainable land initiative, if you don't mind.
I will
Thank you,
send you
sir.
there. Enjoy.
Great.
Now I'm having my own technical difficulties. 1 second.
That's been me all day long.
Well, hopefully it'll go smoothly. Now you're on your way. See you in a bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ah, we're back together.
Oh, okay. We got the first one's in. Oh, here they go.
Sorry, can I go back to my breakout room? I don't know how to get back there.
I think they may have terminated the breakout groups because we're
No, I
moving.
accidentally, it was supposed to be 60 more seconds. And I accidentally
Oh, you had one more thing to say.
Welcome back, everyone. There's a couple, probably 30 more seconds before everyone joins us. So thanks, everyone. I hope you had a great conversation. I'm really excited to hear about it.
Mechanisms are available. Oh, was that my
Welcome back,
Nope, there you go.
everyone. I hope all of you got cut off in the middle of finishing up because you were having such good and wonderful conversations. I can tell you that in the main room, it was pretty quiet and boring. So I hope that that you all had fantastic conversations while you were in there. If we could have stretched it out longer for everyone, we would have. And I actually went about as long as we could without running over. But I wanted to hand it back to Lucia now to kind of run the debrief. Lucia, there's 4 breakouts, and we could probably go between 3 and 5 minutes, depending on how. And
Yeah.
I will be your timekeeper if you tell me to.
Thank you so much, Clay. Welcome back, everyone. I had the pleasure of being in one of the breakout groups for that whole time. And just if the conversation that I heard was anything like yours, that was a really productive conversation. And I not only learned a lot, but gained some clarity about how to do this successfully. So we'll have each group present for approximately 5 minutes. There's 4 total groups, so that'll give us 20 minutes of share out. And then we'll have about 5 minutes of wrap up at the end. So I'm just gonna put my group on the spot because I can. Hannah, do you want to start us off by giving a summary of the solution set that we talked about?
Sure. So we talked about the sustainable land initiative that many of us dug into last week, and sort of the benefits of a systematic approach of having ready and willing landowners kind of at our fingertips when funding or planning or other sort of support services are actually available. And the conversation sort of delved into a variety of topics, but we spent most of our time talking about carbon, the value of carbon as the focus of this conversation, and who is that of value to, and sort of the nuance between ecosystem services, multi-benefit, nature-based solution, and a sole focus on carbon, and sort of arrived on kind of our ending discussion on what it would really take to be able to offer kind of the cadre of support tools to growers who are ready to make a change or continue making changes, especially with respect to the need for monitoring, and whether monitoring is necessarily, you know, soil sampling and sort of lab rigor, or is it Comet Farm or Comet Planner? Is it something that is yet to be decided within our climate action plan conversations that are happening in our localities? So just a really interesting conversation about kind of what we say to growers who are engaged on this subject, what we have to offer, how we sort of package that all up. And then once we have projects ready to go, what is it that we're really trying to do as far as you know, metrics and tabs that we're keeping, and who those benefit. So yeah, it was a really great discussion.
Lucia, you're still on mute.
Thank you. I was gonna offer the microphone actually to you, Michael, or anyone else in our group who might want to add some additional detail.
Yeah, so kind of following on that, we realized the biggest issue we're facing in many of these situations is speed of action. One of the themes that came across from a lot of the conversations over the past few weeks was that there's not enough supply of projects that we know are going to meet our need for carbon sequestration. And we are losing the battle against climate impacts. How do we accelerate that? So much of this focus is on putting people with great knowledge out on landowners' land to identify what projects are going to have the greatest impact, and then connecting those to the necessary resources to help them come to fruition, be that funding or implementation. One of the pieces that we started scratching the surface of during our conversation today, but we didn't get to wrap up, was once we start identifying these projects, how do we tie them into different projects and different accounting mechanisms? Being able to monitor it and track it is one component, but also being able to say, can we tie that into the climate action plans of a specific county or specific municipality to help them to account for that? And we didn't get to touch also on one that I really had hoped we would have gotten to was, can we tie that into CEQA? CEQA is very much on that demand side of saying, hey, here we have a need to sequester so much carbon, to do so much in offsets. Can we tie that to the supply side? Well, not if there's nothing on the supply side. So we really do have to continue to build this ecosystem locally.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. So I think the wrap up from that particular group is really like follow along with the Sustainable Land Initiative. They're doing really innovative work and speeding up what is right now a 2 to 3 year process for landowners to get funding to do this work. And if you want to accelerate that process in your own county or on your own property, Michael's a great person to talk to. So thanks for all the work that you do in this space, and we look forward to following along and applauding your progress and supporting where we can. So please let us know how we can be there for you. Can I get the biochar group up next?
Sure. Do we have a, I know, Mary, you are a note taker. Did you want to present, or do you want one of, okay. All right. Maybe I can co-present with Andrew from Char Technology. Andrew, do you, I guess I'll tee it up here as to what project we looked at. Our project that we were looking at was a project in San Luis Obispo. It is taking the waste stream out of the biodigester that the city of San Luis Obispo has, which is fed by waste from green waste and food waste from the county of the surrounding areas. Taking that waste and putting in a pyrolysis machine that can create biochar from it. Instead of it just being a sludge that goes, somewhere, has to go somewhere, and then ends up getting degraded and losing all that carbon eventually up into the air. It's preserved. We can preserve some of that carbon as biochar, and then also another product within that stream in the production of the biochar is hydrogen. So there's actually 2 byproducts that can come out of this system, which is the hydrogen that could be used and sold for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and used for low carbon fuel standard credits. And then the biochar can then also provide be sold into offsets under the protocols from either Vera or CAR, which are being developed right now. So with that, maybe I can turn it over to Andrew, and he can talk about more of the specifics that we had. We kind of tried to boil it down to what kind of benefits we can have for a general project, and giving it some bounds of smaller to larger scale projects.
Thanks, Andy. I do just want to clarify that right now, because Vera and the CAR platform aren't fully developed, that right now mostly European certifications are being used by the likes of Carbon Future and Pure Earth. But that voluntary market for carbon credits associated with biochar is growing exponentially. And, seeing platforms in the United States certifications as well get established is going to be key for more projects to happen. It's ironic because they're European platforms, but American companies like Microsoft and Shopify are buying up all the credits. Maybe just take a step back, and I really enjoyed, Michael, what you had said, that these projects are taking too long, and they need to happen now. And obviously, working in this space driven by sustainability, but it always comes down to dollars and cents. And the project in San Luis Obispo, really thank Hitachi Zosen and Nova, our partner, who is putting up, already made the big investment to build this digester and operate it, and is now working with us to implement pyrolysis. And pyrolysis is all over Europe, all over Asia, and is really the only process where you can create a biochar where you can sequester carbon within the structure. We really need more regulation. We need more private companies to recognize the opportunity with technologies, whether it's pyrolysis or others, to create products like biochar and sequester carbon, versus moving large quantities of organic waste far distances to be land applied or land filled. Whether it's slash from the forest, which needs to be controlled for burning, biosolids at wastewater treatment plants, compost itself. There's a lot of material out there, other agricultural waste streams, shells, you name it, that can be harnessed and made into biochar and other products. So we see a great opportunity with this first project in San Luis Obispo, and hope that there are a lot more. There needs to be a lot of education, and there needs to be investment both from the public and private side. That's kind of my commentary. And I know, Andy, I didn't really share too much in terms of specifics, so maybe I'll just share some high level numbers. We're on the bigger side as an industrial pyrolysis technology provider. A sweet spot is 10 to 30,000 tons per year of material, organic feedstocks. A lot of other pyrolysis biochar companies are focused on smaller scale, and even at a smaller scale, it's a big capital investment to build these systems, and there needs to be support again. So hopefully that provides some good background on the project in San Luis Obispo and the other opportunities that are out there.
Thank you so much, Andrew. For the sake of time, I'm going to transition to the next group. I think that there was one focused on like no-till, low-till. Is that right?
That was us.
Great.
Yes.
Molly, passing the baton to you.
Cool. So our group did not necessarily develop a project per se, but we did chat about kind of general barriers for carbon farming adoption and some of the barriers that face the actual monitoring, reporting, and verification part of the project development. So say that a grower or landowner has the funds to implement carbon farming, but then they want to go and actually market credits from that implementation. There's a gap of technical assistance in the sense that that growers, really, it's quite an onerous process to go through at the farm scale. And we also talked about the actual price associated with that. I shared some of my personal experience on our family's ranch as we've just marketed our first carbon credits. And there are some questions around, how does that scale? The only reason why a farm of our size was even able to market credits was because it was aggregated as a larger transaction. So our farm was one of like 6 or 7 farms that sold credits through Nori and were purchased by the Tufts Business School. But we talked about how unique that is and how it's potentially a replicable model of bringing together small implementation projects, but aggregating them to reduce transaction costs and to reduce the cost of monitoring, reporting, and verification. We also discussed just on a local level, because our group was the no-till group, we talked about challenges with reducing till in an annual cropping system, especially like high dollar commodity crops, and just the real barriers that growers are facing. But then we talked about some areas that potentially have a lot of room for adoption. So reducing tillage in perennial systems like orchards is already kind of on the rise, and there's the potential to increase adoption of no-till in vineyards as well. And then we talked a little bit, the group was just kind of interested in compost application and the scalability of compost application on broad acre application, given that Ventura and Santa Barbara County has quite a bit of open range land that is appropriate for compost application. So it was a bit of a curving conversation, but we covered a lot. And then lastly, there was conversation we had a member of the group familiar with the climate action planning process who's passionate about bringing developing climate action plans to actually incentivize the adoption of carbon farming and natural sequestration solutions. And then we also had a member of our group who is familiar with the CEQA and NEPA process and feels like there's some real potential to tie CEQA and NEPA to the climate action planning process as an incentive for local nature-based sequestration solutions.
Wow, Molly. I feel like I gained a new brain in listening to all of those things that y'all talked about. That's amazing. And what a affirmation of the wealth of knowledge that we all bring to this conversation. I can't remember the name of the final group.
I think we're
but-
like climate action planning and offsets group.
Great.
So we were mostly public agencies, but we did have some folks from DUDEC and an organization called Rescape California that focused on regenerative landscaping. And so we kind of took two examples. One was looking at the kinds of projects that Rescape California does, which is kind of small plot regenerative landscaping, training people on the ground to plant and maintain and monitor these kinds of these kinds of landscapes, but then also equip them with tools and resources to monitor and kind of verify based off of the checklist to certify them as being regenerative. And then the other example was looking at a water district that does, on occasion, habitat restoration for other water benefits, such as increasing water supply or water quality, flood protection, or just increasing natural habitat. And so, there's carbon benefits associated with those projects, and wanting to think of ways to identify that value and get that monetized. We didn't get too far into kind of developing these projects, but just understanding more, what the mechanics currently are. If done at a higher scale, like what might they cost? We opened up our discussion with just some kind of takeaways from our experience over the previous four sessions, and I think a lot of us came to consensus that and ideally a more local, regional, a more regionally responsive marketplace or bank of sorts would be ideal. That all these kinds of systems and protocols and third parties and registries that get created, for this national and international marketplace is really in my mind, is mostly a means of supplementing trust. And without having trust and being able to connect with someone that you're investing in and being able to have access to and see and touch the changes that they're affecting on a certain landscape, you need to have all these other higher systems of accountability, but that creates more systems of transactions, and that creates costs and barriers. So, how do we reduce those costs and barriers? How do we increase a level of trust at a local level that will help to induce this kind of activity and give people the right assurances that they'll get paid for doing the right thing, and that the people who are paying are going to also get the thing that they're hoping to get out of the work that they've invested in. So I think unless anyone has anything else to say from our group, I will turn it back over to you, Lucia.
Thank you, Garrett. Well, that's all of our share outs. I think there's one nugget of content that I'd like to add to the conversation, which is our group talked about like 2 pathways towards ensuring that the right thing is happening on the land once a project is implemented. And one is ongoing monitoring and maintenance, and that perhaps only some stakeholders are really well suited to take on the burden of doing that work. And there's also a widespread practice in all areas of business in the United States, which is contracts, and that there might be a role to play in really clearly defined contracts that landowners have to sign that prohibit certain activities that we know degrade the capacity of compost spreading to do its job of sequestering carbon, or tree planting to actually grow big trees. And so that there's multiple ways to kind of build that trust, and contracts are another way that we can do that. With that, I will hand the conversation over to Andy to wrap us up. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lucia. Okay, so I'd like to just go ahead and encourage everyone. I know we had some note takers today. Maybe the teams can work together to finalize those notes, and then those can be used as a resource and something that we can share out as a byproduct or as a product of our webinar series here. So this has been a really fun event. I really appreciate the team that I've worked with to bring this webinar series to you all. And we've had 4 sessions where we did some deep learning on carbon sequestration and offsets. And then today's session where we looked at really the possibilities of carbon sequestration and offset projects that can be implemented and replicated for rapid scaling in California. These projects can help us meet our local and our local GHG reductions requirements that we're looking for. Can help us with our caps, help us meet CEQA needs and goals, and all that is as we try to stretch toward California's climate goals for 2030 and 2045. So with that, I think I'd like to just go ahead and thank everybody for participating today, and look forward to what we all see from the results from today. And a couple other things. We want to encourage you all to complete the surveys that we will be sending out to you. We're interested in learning how we did. We're also interested in learning about what you might be interested in us pursuing for further topics in the future, and your level of interest in continuing to participate in our in this space that we are a part of. So with that, I'll close it up. Thank you very much for attending and for your participation.
Thanks all. Have a great day.
Clay, I'm assuming you want us to hang out. You're muted, but